What's up, car audio enthusiasts? Today we're going to talk a little bit about tweeters, and hopefully we can help you guys sort out any issues you might be having, or improve your overall performance of your car audio system. If nothing else, you're going to learn a few new things and give you something to think about. So, for quite a number of years, we've been using combinations of drivers to solve different problems. And one of the most common now is going to be using some sort of mid driver like this guy alongside a tweeter. I have a super tweeter here handy. I go huge super tweeter. Also little tweeters, different types of tweeters: soft dome, silk dome, titanium dome, aluminum, beryllium, all sorts of metals. But the point is, in order to tell your system, in order to play those two different types of drivers, you have to decide how much of the frequency each one of those is playing. In this case, we have a coaxial. And as is with a lot of the newer coaxials, you can actually wire them separately. So there is a tweeter here and a little mid-range. And then over here, you can hook up to two wires and play both the tweeter and the mid-range from one signal. But you can also disconnect these two wires here and run a separate signal to the tweeter to the mid-range, which allows you to bi-amp them. Same thing goes with this Audio-Dynamic 3000 series. So again, tweeter and a mid-range. And back here, we have a capacitor to filter frequency from the tweeter, so it's not getting any bass and any lows. But at the same time, you can hook up to these two terminals and play both drivers, or you can separate these two wires right here and bi-amp, or hook up two different signals to the same unit and control them separately. So that being the case for even, I don't have any more in here. Even really inexpensive coaxials today have that option, and we're not taking advantage of that enough. So a lot of people like to run what we call components, and components essentially separates those two items. In fact, a lot of drivers like this, like this one, a lot of drivers like this coaxial, there's actually a screw inside here, which allows you to remove this podium, this pedestal that this tweeter is sitting on, and then you can pull that whole thing out. This wire will come out, pull out through the whole assembly can come out, and then the driver will have a phase plug or a device you can screw into the center of it to take the place of it, so you kind of have a complete driver and a tweeter separate. All right, so that allows you to convert the coaxial into a component set, or vice versa. I think it's a brilliant design. One of the better, more important things that we've done in mids and highs over the years is give those options. So you've heard me talk before, if you are a subscriber, about why I prefer to use coaxial driver. And the primary reason is whenever you have your mid-frequency and your tweeter located in the same location, time alignment is natural. So it's naturally going to be in the right place. It's also better for imaging because the sound's all coming from the same location. And that ultimately gives you a better sound. If you don't believe me, listen to a set of coaxials in the doors and then listen to the same car with that set split up to where you have the woofers and the doors and then the tweeters up high. You may prefer the sound with the tweeters separated, but if I ask you to give me the best imaging, if you're honest, you're always going to prefer the coaxial locations where you've got them in the same place. It gives you a better overall sound. And I also, myself, I prefer to have coaxials and then a set of tweeters up high. I like that sound better. I like the extra highs located off axis from the tweeters up higher to kind of space out the sound field. But what I don't like is the woofer in the door and the tweeter up high. I hate not having the tweeter with the woofer because it makes it sound that hollow sounds coming from down there. And then you get the tweeter you can tell there's a difference, and that just bugs the crap out of me. So that's my personal preference, of course. But that's not what we're talking about specifically today. One of the biggest problems with tweeters not sounding right, probably the number one reason tweeters don't sound right, there's actually two. One of those reasons is going to be that the tweeters are either out of phase or in phase, and their phase should be changed. And that's a big thing. That will actually impact the overall sound in a major way. Another reason that tweeters tend to not sound right is because they're reflecting off of something hard and they shouldn't be. Sometimes that is the perfect thing for them to do, is reflect off of something hard. Other times that is the worst case scenario. It just depends on the vehicle. And a hard reflection can drastically increase the volume and the gain of the tweeter, so it can sound significantly louder. And if you have a scenario where you have one tweeter that's receiving a boost from a reflection and you have another tweeter that's not, you may have to fix that in the levels. You may also have that boost at a certain frequency, and you may have to go in there and fix that in the levels. So you may have to go in there and take that frequency down on that tweeter to get those to balance. But that's not the key thing either. None of those things are the key. Tweeters don't really suffer from time alignment nearly as much as these guys do, okay? The biggest problem is people crossing over the tweeters too low. If you have a tweeter that is a middler, something like this, where you're playing, this thing can play from 160 to 20K. In fact, it plays 30 and 40 hertz because I put it in the T-line in one video, and it's freaking insane. But since this thing can play so high, you can run without a tweeter. But even with it running without a tweeter, there's still a little bit of sprinkled at the top that it doesn't quite get. So adding a small tweeter to it is something that's crossed over at like 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 hertz. It's brilliant. Now, what you don't want to do is drop a 3,000 hertz tweeter in there, because to be perfectly honest, a tweeter, a little beryllium dome, silk dome, aluminum dome tweeter is as good at producing 2,000, 3,000, 1,000 hertz as this thing is at producing 30 hertz. Can it do it? Yes. But not as good as its kinfolk. So if you're you want your primary range that you're hearing. Also, whenever you can create a scenario where your primary range of music you're hearing, sound, is coming from one driver. Everything from like 100 hertz up to 8,000-9,000 hertz. That's like 90% of the music information. That's basically what your phone plays, the sound that your phone, frequencies your phone plays. If all of that is coming from a single source, like for instance, a driver like this or like this one, right? If all that information is coming from this single driver, then all you have to worry about is putting these guys in the right position and time aligning them. And then everything else is just sprinkles on the cake, right? The more information you're playing with those drivers, the better. And then you want to, basically what I'm saying is, you want to use the least amount of tweeter and the least amount of woofer. You want to take that, you want to get that mid-range that's got a fat enough wideband to it that you can just use a little bit of woofer and a tiny bit of tweeter to achieve your goals. You want your mid-range to play most of the information. And the more of that you can play with that single driver, the smoother the overall tune is going to be. Now, this isn't a perfect scenario. Obviously, we have 2 ways, 3 ways, 4 ways, and we have subwoofers and woofers, and we have many different ways to break this up. And they all work depending on the car and the situation and what you're dealing with. But the more information you can put into that sweet spot, up where you're getting the speakers mounted in the perfect spot, it's more about a physical location thing. The more information you can get in that single driver that's giving you your main imaging, the smoother it's going to sound. And don't cross over your tweeters low. You're going to run into problems with that. There'll be some songs where it'll sound perfect, and other songs where you go, oh my God, I have created a bad thing. I have to fix it. So it's a variable, and that's the thing. But the higher up, if you want to know a good bass point, try to use drivers that can play pretty high like these guys. Set your crossovers up around 8K on your tweeters, or 9 or 10. I mean, it doesn't need to play, vocals. It needs to play the tips of the consonants, S, T, most of that shouldn't even be in the tweeter. It should be just the crisp little tips of that. If it's playing, keys on a piano, if you're hearing the notes on a piano, that tweeter's way too low. You should be hearing the twinkle, the click of the thing and the twinkle at the very top of that note. Get a good driver that can play pretty high and let it carry most of that work. And save that little crisp little tweeter for the very ends and very edges of that sound. And your overall sound feel will be a much warmer experience. Now, even if you want to run something like what I'm doing now, I'm running these guys. Well, not these, but something like them. Normally, they're associated with really harsh reproduction and really being, ear taxing. The fact is, if you cross them over nice and high and don't try to overplay them, then you have a virtually indestructible source of great tweeterness. It's more the use case than the item. So, like subwoofers, for example, running 412s, 8,000 watts. That doesn't mean I have to run it at full power, full volume, and at 150 decibels. I can run that just as low and slow and smooth as any other system. That just means I have it there if I want to use it. So, it is what it is, man. It is the equipment that makes it sound bad. It's how it's being used. And most of the time, if somebody's got a set of these in their car, they're probably not using them right. Or at least they're not using them in the way that makes your ears happy. Anyway, guys, I hope y'all found this interesting, entertaining, helpful, or anything else for that matter. And if you did, be sure and hit that subscribe button down below and leave me comments. I mean, what's your input on this? I mean, how do you feel? Where do you like to just cross over your tweeters at? What I like to cross over mine at 8K. I like to cross over my subs at around 50 or 60 hertz. I like to keep them down low. My tweeters way up high. Better overall cleanliness, better sound. But that's my personal opinion. You guys let me know what you think. Peace.